Hello again. Welcome to our third lesson for beginners. We're gonna go right away into the subject. We gotta make sure we take advantage of the time that we have. In our previous class, we talked about how the relationship that we need to have with the Creator is all about knowing that we have a will to receive and that the Creator is a will to bestow or give, and that the Creator wants to fill our desire with light, and that light will give pleasure to our vessel or desire. However, our desire is egoistic, is pure ego, right? It's a desire to receive, wants to receive everything. And what we need to do is, in order to change our egoistic desire to receive, we need to create a screen. We need to change the intention that we have to receive only for the self, and start using it for the intention of receiving in order to give pleasure to the Creator. And we talk about that when we do commandments, especially in the Jewish tradition, we practice certain commandments. We wear a kippah, we wear tzitzis, we pray 3 times a day. We do these things, they are commanded. But we need to do them in a way that is not because there's a law in the religion that we need to fulfill, but because it is something that we want to do in order to please the Creator. And also we need to know what is the intention behind it, because what's the point of me wearing tzitzis if I don't know what is the intention that was behind the tzitzis? What is the hidden meaning of the tzitzis themselves? And for that, we need to study many, I would say, opinions of ancient rabbis, and also the opinions of the Kabbalists that give us, some insight in what it is that actually the tzitzit means and what type of corrections we're doing when we actually fulfill that type of commandment or mitzvah. So we talk about that. We also talk about how, in order for us to go up the ladder, we need to understand that we came down that ladder first to this world, and that there are 125 steps down and 125 steps up. And we talk about that the 125 steps that we talk about have to do with the 5 levels that we have in each of those steps of the ladder. Remember, 5 levels from Adam Kadmon, Atzilut, Briah, Yetzirah, Asiyah, and then the same levels are inside each of these levels, and each of these sub-levels. So each of these sub-levels here also have 5 levels. Okay, so all in all, we would say that here we have 25. Right, 25 levels on each of them. So we got 25 here as well, 25 levels here as well, 25 levels here as well, and 25 levels here as well, and that will give us 125. Okay, so we need to understand that where we are right now, we're in the level of the Olam Hazeh. And at this level, we are actually in what we call obscurity or lack of light. There's nothing here that can actually, help us see what is actually up there in the higher realms. We have a glimpse, of what is up there, and that's what we have. But there's some things in here that we need to understand, in the Lam Hase. And this that in order for us to rise up, we need to know what is the work that we need to do here. What is it that we need to recognize in order for us to climb that ladder up and go back to the original state that we were when we were in the original soul called Adam Harishon, which was in the Garden of Eden. I'm giving you a little hint of what's going on in the book of Bereshit, which is a book that our teachings are going to be based on. And the Garden of Eden is basically Atzilut, and Adam was living basically in this world right here. His feet were actually in the top of Isaiah, a little bit there, and then when he fell all the way down, so down that it went to a level of the klipots, or the a level where there's darkness, where light doesn't reach. And these are the most coarse and most evil in the human mind levels that there is. That's why we feel pain and suffering at the level of our human, I would say, of our human physical reality level. And there's a barrier. It's a barrier that we need to cross. That barrier, the barrier is called Maxim in Hebrew. And in order for us to cross the Maxim, we need to correct our egoistic desires. And to correct our egoistic desires, we need to understand how these desires develop throughout time. And we covered that at the end of the last lesson. And this desire, as they develop throughout history, human history, and you can see, that it has to be human history, prehistorical, desires, like food, sex, and shelter. We were just like animals, to the point that we develop, civilizations and political system, financial systems. We develop systems of knowledge, like philosophy and all that. And at this point now we're in a barrier. We actually are reaching a barrier. And the only way we can cross that barrier is by recognizing that we need to unite as a whole, as human beings, right? So I hope you remember this graph. This actually was at the end of our last lesson. We talk about how actually the system of desire in the human race actually develop, and also how it develops in ourselves. Because believe it or not, what you see here happened to all of us. It happened to us. How that happened? The following way: when we were babies, what you want is food, right? And you want to be fed. That's why you want your mother, your father will provide for you, right? So we are babies there. As we develop, we are then, in a state of puberty and everything. We start developing these sexual orientations, right? And then after that, we want to get married, have our own house, right? And after that, we want to make sure we have a job, right? We want to make sure we have something to maintain our house or shelter. And then comes the power, and that power comes in different ways. It can be the power of being a person that has a title out there, or it can be a person that is recognized in society as a pillar of society or something like that, and or a pillar of your own family. We also develop systems of knowledge. They say, knowledge is power. Knowledge translates to power. In reality, a lot of people would tell you, knowledge just means, you have more responsibilities. You got science and religion. And it's very important for you to understand that these 4 levels right here are similar to a system that a psychologist developed in the past. Let me see if I can find a graph, but it's a pyramid of Abraham Maslow, and in there you're gonna see some similarities. See if I can get that graph for you so you can see what we're talking about. Okay, let's see if we can put it. There you go. Okay, so this is the Maslow Hierarchy of Needs. This is psychological, safety, love, belonging, esteem, accomplishment, self-realization. So he actually was talking specifically, I said psychological, it's physiological actually, which is this here. Safety is gonna be around here. Love and belonging is still here. Esteem and accomplishment, we're talking about wealth, power, and then knowledge, I would say, will fall into self-equalization, achieving one's potential. But there's a problem. We're missing this part, right? According to Maslow, when we reach that's the peak of that pyramid. But according to the wisdom of Kabbalah, we are actually missing something. We're supposed to be at the peak of this pyramid, right? Self-actualization. However, it's supposed to be here, and we're not reaching it. And it's very interesting to see, that a psychologist like Maslow actually he came with these ideas. I wonder if he learned these ideas from the Kabbalah, because it's very, very, very similar. The problem with us is that we are at this moment in a non-satisfaction level. We're trying at this moment as human beings, and this is seen mostly in the younger generation. They're the ones that are feeling this more than the older generation. They want everything. They want more and more and more, and they're never satisfied. And they feel that they don't have time to get knowledge about what they want. They just want it. They just want it. Just give it to me. Is it give me, me. However, that generation and the previous generations as well, I would say 2-3 generations before the millennials, we will find that they were already thinking about something that right now has become very important. And it's the fact that we're in this wall that we cannot cross. And we're on that wall because we find ourselves in a position that we cannot live without each other. We depend from each other. My position and my job depends on the positions of those below me and those above me. The position of a politician depends on those people that he rules and those people that influence him, and the people that he doesn't rule, like other rulers in the world. If you see the system in the world is a system that is interdependent, financially interdependent. When a crisis hits one country, it creates a ripple effect that actually is going to affect other countries. And that is very interesting to understand, very interesting to see and understand, because that is telling us something. It's our artificial system created by human beings called the financial system, the political system that is also an artificial system, is actually giving us a message. And the message is that we depend on each other, that we cannot go forward without each other. Nature has already those rules. We depend on nature for everything. Our financial system can be affected by nature. Our political system can be affected by nature. Our societies, our personal lives, family lives, and everything can be affected by nature. Nature is the most powerful force out there. And we need to have that in mind, because it's only when we work together with nature, and when I say with nature, I mean not respecting Mother Nature, as people call it. It's respecting that, respecting the natural resources, respecting the planet Earth as our own home, the only home that we have. Well, when I say nature, I'm talking about the force behind that force that we call, the natural resources, the force that is behind even our own health and well-being. So at this moment in our time, we see that there's a lot of people that suffer of depression. There's a lot of depression in these days. We see a crisis with the environment. We see a financial crisis. We see a health crisis. As I speak right now, we have a pandemic going on. Everybody's at their house. Nobody can get out unless you follow certain restrictions. So we are in a system that we need to make sure that we understand how these rules, how these laws of this system work, in order for us to see that everything that happened, even when it looks in our fragmented mind as good and evil, is actually one and the same. And this is the whole thing. But in order for us to recognize that, we need to recognize that we have a problem. We mentioned before, we have an egoistic nature, right? We have an egoistic nature. So the first thing we need to do is to recognize that egoistic nature. That's the thing. And there's something we're going to touch base later, is that the first thing that we need to do is to recognize the evil inside ourselves. I need to recognize that I'm not a righteous person, that I have an egoistic nature, that I basically work in opposite to what the Creator wants from me. What does the Creator wants from me is actually the same thing that I want, the same thing that I'm looking for, the same thing that I'm looking everywhere and I cannot find, and that's the reason I'm not satisfied. And is this constant pleasure from the light. The only problem is, because we're in a physical reality, we're looking for that pleasure in physical things and material things, thinking that those things will fill our vessel. You want a new car, buy a new car, and you're gonna see the first few months you're gonna take care of that car. Eventually, you take it for granted. It's not gonna feel you as when you bought it in the first day. And that happens with every desire. Once you have a desire, you fulfill that desire, a bigger desire comes after that. And that's human nature here in our physical reality, right? So we mentioned we're in an impasse. We cannot cross here. There's a key, and I mentioned that in the previous slide, and that was love your friend as yourself. And that's the only way we can manifest the Creator, because the Creator is hidden, so we think, but it's not hidden. We are the ones hiding from the Creator, I don't know if you heard or if you read in Genesis, Bereshit, where it says that Adam and Eve, they saw that they were naked. So when they heard the Creator in the Garden of Eden calling Adam, they hid themselves among the trees. And that's basically a symbolic way of saying that we fell lower in our degrees, spiritual degrees, to the point that we cannot have this relationship with the Creator at the same level that we were before what is called the sin, which we're going to touch base in this, on that word, sin, later in another lesson. And that's what's happening right now. We're in a state in which we need to recognize evil. Then after that, there's going to be some revelations. And the first revelation is the revelation of evil, that we're evil. We are egoistic in nature. And there's nothing, we can do other than find out the cure for that kind of disease. And the cure is, believe it or not, and it's going to sound kind of biased, but Kabbalah says, that the antidote for egoism is basically loving your friend as yourself, studying Kabbalah, and finding a teacher that will guide you so you can have this type of work, spiritual work, done. So the work is not by yourself only, it's a work that has to be done with other people. Somehow you have to participate in a group. Somehow you have to join another person that you might not like, a person that is different than you, a person that might be, in a different level, a different belief system than you, and unite, learn together to rise together spiritually. Then after that, we're going to be able to cross that barrier, right, and reach spirituality. In the meantime, when this revelation of evil happen in you, when this revelation of evil start revealing spirituality, there's something happening inside our desires. And remember, when we say heart, inside your heart, we're talking about desires. And that's that little point right there. Let me see if I can put a different color so you can. That little point right there. That little point right there is the highest spiritual level in the soul of a person. It's the highest spiritual level in the soul of a group of people that are studying with the same goal, achieving spirituality. That point in the system of Baal HaSulam is called the point in the heart. That point in the heart is actually the high level called Yisrael. So that level Yisrael start manifesting in you. Yisrael is another word for directly towards El, towards the Creator, Yashar El. That point in the heart actually is very, very small, as you can see. The rest, let me change this. The rest is basically egoistic. All these are egoistic desires. And these egoistic desires is what is called in the Bible, and it's called in Kabbalah, the nations. So once you have that development, spiritual development internally, you start developing this point in the heart. This point in the heart is very tiny. It's a fetus. It is very tiny, and you need to start developing the spiritual fetus to the point that is going to be born into the spiritual world, right? But that can only be done by achieving spirituality through the connection of the whole soul, right? So the work is going to be on that little point. But in reality, the whole work needs to be done in a group of people who have the same goal, the same desire to achieve spirituality. Alright? So we got a little point there. That little point. Well, it's just like that little 1% of our heart that yearns, wants to bestow back to the Creator, to be like the Creator. And the rest is just egoistic desires. Now, how do we achieve that? We achieve that by recognizing what's going on. What's the system is all about. In the first slide, we talk about our relationship with the Creator, right? We mentioned about how we are willed to receive, Creator's will to bestow, and our relationship should be, creating this screen, and this screen will actually help us to receive certain percent for us in order to give to the Creator, right? And it's achieved by loving yourself as yourself. Once we recognize that the Creator is will to bestow and we're will to receive, we need to understand that this is a system, and this system is based on 125 steps. And 125 steps down ended up to the point that we are right now, to the point that we are broken into 600,000 pieces. And each of these 606,000 pieces are broken into 613 desires that equal to the mitzvot that actually need to be corrected. So each mitzvot is a reminder, it's a counsel, that reminds you what needs to be corrected in your soul, in your desire. So that's very interesting, right? To know where we are. We are a broken soul. If we put together all these pieces, we will be able to go up these 125 steps. But remember, there's something here, and that's the Maxim. That's the barrier. We cannot cross the barrier unless we recognize evil, and unless we start revealing the Creator in our lives. And we're going to talk about that, revelation of evil, and then about fear and love of the Creator. What does that mean in Kabbalah? Because we hear it a lot in not only from religious preacher and rabbis and other people, fear and love of the Creator. What does this really mean in Kabbalah? What's the spiritual side of love and fear? What is that all about? You're gonna see that it's gonna make more sense for you now, the love and fear of the Creator. So I hope you have this clear and have been taking note, because this is, if you take notes of this, you're gonna be understanding then when we go deeper, because this is just the basics of what we're going to be talking in the future, with more Hebrew words, to the point that you will understand what we're talking about when we say 613. Those 613 desires, or 613 commandments that divide themselves into 248 and 365. 345 are positive, 365 are negative, and the 248 are going to be called Galgalta and 9, and the 365 are going to be called the Hap. And then you're going to say, what is Galgalta and 9, and what is the Hap? And when you find out that these are Hebrew names that have to do with body parts, you will not be confused with the physical things of our own physical features as human beings. This is a symbolic language that the Kabbalists actually use to make sure that we understand certain spiritual roots. In fact, it's called the language of roots and branches, in which there's a root in spirituality, and when they mention, let's say, I, even though it sounds like the I here on earth, yeah, there's an I here on earth in our face, but it's also an I in spirituality. The root is in spirituality. Ear, the same things. Ear, hearing God and things like that. Those are spiritual symbols that you're gonna find in the Bible, that you're gonna find Kabbalistic text, and it's just for you to understand what is it all about, what kind of level, spiritual level, we're talking about in Kabbalah. So we have that, right? We have this idea. I hope kind of clear. We need to understand that there's only two things in creation. There's only two things, and that is the will to bestow and the will to receive. There's only light and vessel. That's it. You're gonna find just light coming in and the vessel. Light bestows. When light bestows, the vessel receives. But that interaction creates a whole system, that is gonna be very interesting for us to study and understand, because it's gonna let us understand what really happened in the story of the Garden of Eden, and so on and so forth. What is the purpose of life? The purpose of life here on earth. What is it that we need to be in this lower realm, being 600,000 pieces broken off, and how we can get back to that? You need to understand that those 600,000 pieces of the soul of the original Adam Harishon broke in 600,000 pieces, but those 600,000 pieces broke into another pieces, remember? And we're part of those 600,000 pieces, and our souls, our personal individual souls, have a root soul in those 600,000 pieces of Adam Harishon. So you're gonna find some Kabbalists, when you read Kabbalistic books, that says, each man will learn and will know according to their own level. It's because of the root soul. Not everyone comes from the same root soul, and that's why some Kabbalists have some issues with people that try to make certain rules about who can and who can't study Kabbalah, who can convert, who cannot convert, who can return to Judaism, and if they return to Judaism, how they should return to Judaism, things like that. Because Kabbalists understand that we don't know what is the root soul of the person that we are actually talking about. We don't know the root soul of the people that we are probably holding back spiritually, simply because we have these religious, laws, and we have put basically God in this box, and God is ours and it's not yours. But if you want a piece of God, you have to follow these rules, you have to meet these requirements, and in that way you can participate in with this God that we have in a box. When God is everywhere, God doesn't care if you're Jewish, Gentile, whatever. He wants to correct everybody the same way. All right? It's just that certain people, like I mentioned in a previous lesson, certain people, in this case, Israel and the Jews, they were the keepers of this wisdom. But this wisdom now has to be free, has to be studied by everybody. And this wisdom that now is out there, the wisdom of Kabbalah, is what is going to help human beings that are interested in developing themselves, spiritually, to understand that the only way that we can reach spirituality, the only way that we can reveal the Creator, is by understanding the purpose of our life, and that is that we need to achieve equality of form with the Creator. And the only way we can achieve spirituality of form with the Creator is by practicing with other people, loving our friends as ourselves. That's the only way we can transform our will to receive into a will to bestow. It doesn't mean we're gonna stop, receiving. We're not gonna receive what the Creator is giving us. It just means that we will receive with a different intention. And the intention is very important. Like I mentioned before, the intention is that lid in top of the vessel. It's like a filter that would not allow all the light to go in order to fulfill the egoistic desire, but it will allow a certain amount of light inside the vessel, just enough for the vessel to calculate how much it can work with that light in order to work in accordance to what the Creator wants the vessel to do. One thing that you need to understand, that this will to bestow, that little point in the heart that we mentioned here, is called Israel. And Israel is manifest in the following way. It's an altruistic desire inside ourselves that wants to know spirituality, wants to participate in spirituality, wants to correct the rest of the egoistic desires that we call nations. So all these desires, Israel and the nations, they are inside ourselves. The Kabbalists will tell you that all the worlds are inside ourselves. Everything is inside ourselves. And this is what it is. We mentioned the 4 desires. Alright, these 4 desires, when you look at these 4 desires, 4 desires right here, these are the nations. Let's see if I can write well with this. These are the nations. Maybe I should write with a different color. These are the nations inside our heart, and you're gonna be seeing that manifested also outside in the physical reality. To this day, you're gonna find that there's a nation called Israel. Physically, this is a political and social nation called Israel, and there's something called United Nations that represents all the nations of the world, and you're gonna find that these organizations kind like always against Israel, against whatever Israel does. When you see other nations doing something worse than Israel, somehow this group of nations find a way to blame Israel for anything that happens in the whole world and have excuses for other people misbehaving. And that has a spiritual root in what we are actually talking about here, okay? But these are the nations. This is all that you're gonna see. This is all political system, financial system, science and religion, abusing nature and everything. And you're gonna say, yeah, but this political nation that is called Israel also does the same thing. And yes, does the same thing because it is at the same level as the nation, but a little bit higher, because a little bit higher, but it's at the same level of the nation, still below spiritualities. It hasn't actually been born spiritually as Israel. It's a spiritual Israel, it's a physical Israel that needs correction, but there's a spiritual Israel that also is correcting. And that spiritual Israel is comprised of 10 Sephirot, 10 tribes that are going to be corrected, right? And in the Bible, you're going to find about these 10 tribes that were lost. They're lost into the nations, into the cliphotic world, and they need to be raised from those dark nations, dark desires. And this is why you see some people that are called Gentiles having some type of desire to study Judaism and things like that, because somehow they have a spark that belongs to this level of Israel. And that's why, Kabbalists sometimes are careful when they go like, we have a Gentile who's interested in this, in following Torah, whether it's religiously or not. Should we stop this person from doing what they're doing? Should we tell them, hold on, this is not for you, stick with the Noahide laws? Or we just should let them go with the flow of their own spiritual development? Should we put religion as a stumbling block, or should we let spirituality flow in this person's life? Should we make spirituality the first thing this person needs to understand, or should we make religion the first thing this person needs to understand? There are rules to be part of Israel. There are rules for Israel if you want to be part of the political and social Israel. But the spiritual Israel, as Kabbalist, the Kabbalist going to tell you there's no rules. You want to come in, you're going to get the light. The light will correct you. In fact, there's a saying that comes from the Talmud, I think, that it says, whoever comes to rectify is aided, is helped. So it doesn't matter if you are from the so-called nations. If you are a spark that is coming out of darkness, Kabbalah will be there. All right. So these are the nations, like I mentioned, and the other desire that we have here, this is Israel. It's a small desire. Eventually it's going to grow bigger than the other desires. And these two desires are always against each other, right? They're always against each other. There's always this kind of like barrier. And you're going to find, there are different levels of the nations in the world. The nations are friends of Israel, but not necessarily, their best friends, because all the nations want something they want for themselves. I'm going to give you a good example of something that happened to me in the past when I was in my search. I met this person from a Messianic, from the Messianic Judaism, which we all know as Messianic Christianity. But it was from that background. And when I was in the search, I was around those groups, trying to find meaning in my life, to find some type of connection somehow. And eventually got out because of Kabbalah. Kabbalah actually was the reason that I searched beyond those groups, and I found Judaism, and I did basically return. But I remember this person telling me the following: the reason that they bless Israel, and I'm talking about in religious term, because this person was talking in the religious level. The reason they bless Israel is because they want the blessings. And when I ask what blessings, the blessings that were given to Abraham. Basically, the blessing is, whoever bless you will be blessed, whoever curse you will be cursed. So if we are Christians, we shouldn't be condemning Israel, otherwise we'll be condemning ourselves. And that's a very nice thing to do, support Israel, support, the people, the Jewish people, the people of Israel. But it's a very egoistic way of supporting Israel. It's not an honest support. And that's a religious, example. However, that same example from that person happens also in some Jews as well. They support Israel because they're Jews and they want to make sure, but it's all egoistic as well. But then the Kabbalah says, that's nonsense. That has nothing to do with spirituality. We support Israel, and the real Israel that we support is a spiritual Israel, and that Israel is an Israel that not all Israel is Jewish, and not all Jews are part of that Israel, and that's a spiritual Israel. And they're going to tell you also that some of the Jews and some of these Christians, are actually part of Israel, but also some Jews and Christians are also part of the nations because of the way they behave, the way they use religion to talk bad about other people, and use religion to attack other people instead of loving other people and learning from other people and starting, this process of correction among themselves. And that's how the Messianic era will come, when we become one, right? But within ourselves, we have, like I said, Israel and also the nations. We have this desire for spirituality, but there's also this need of the body. We want to be fed. We want to be, wealthy. We want to have power and position. We want to have all the knowledge and everything. And the last desire of knowledge is the one that most of us struggle a lot. Because when you're studying Kabbalah, your egoistic desire asks you to learn. And you confuse knowledge with wisdom and spirituality. And knowledge doesn't necessarily mean that you have a higher spiritual level than anybody else. In fact, probably there's people listening to me right now that don't know anything about Kabbalah. Probably they don't even know about the Bible. They don't even follow religion or philosophy or anything like that. And they might be in a higher level spiritually than I am and that you are. So you have to be careful when you judge people according to what they know, because you don't know. Most likely they don't even know what level they are. Everything is hidden from us. Alright? So the desire of Israel, this desire for spirituality, is a desire that attracts the light towards the nations, attracts this light towards the egoistic desires. So if we build this little Israel in us, this little point in the heart that fetus that will grow and grow and grow into a human being that is going to be born in spirituality, which is the Messianic age, we will be helping the nations, egoistic desires in us and the egoistic desires in others, if we unite, as one heart and one man, one heart. It will help us raise above that barrier that we talk about, called the Maxim, right? That's the only way we can get out of this world and reach spirituality, because we need to understand that this is the physical. Really can't write with this thing. Physical, and this is spiritual right here. And the physical is just a, believe it or not, it's a very tiny part of the whole creation, the whole system. But we think this is everything for us. We think that this little jail that we are, this little cage that we are, it's all that there is. Because we look at the universe, and we see how vast it is, how many light years we can look back in time and everything. We think that, wow, this is huge. But in the spiritual realm, it's very tiny, very tiny. The spiritual realm is much bigger than that, and that's something, that is hard to grasp. So think about that, all right? So when you build that point in the heart, you're bringing light into your soul. We're going to talk in the next lesson about how this manifests in our lives as pain and suffering. But if we recognize evil in our lives, if we recognize what we need to work on, if we recognize, that what we need to do is basically look at ourselves internally and not at other people, but on the contrary, as I work on myself and helping other people, we will raise ourselves spiritually higher and higher, and bringing up with us those people that probably don't have, any idea of spirituality at all. And somehow we're bringing light to them too. We're bringing light to the whole world. There's something in the Bible that you're going to find that where it says, be a light to the nations. That's Israel. That's the Israel in you. That's what you need to become, Israel among the nations, among those egoistic desires, among the egoistic people that you're dealing with. Not blaming them for the things that happen to you, but studying the situation. Why these people are thinking these things about me? Why am I thinking these things about them? And recognizing that everything that I'm thinking that is bad is in reality the Creator sending me a message and telling me how egoistic I am. I'm very egoistic. So all I want is these people to work on my favor, and I'm not going to work on their favor because they revolve around me. I don't revolve around them. When in reality, we're not revolving around anybody, and nobody's revolving around ourselves. We're revolving together around something called energy, light, and that light comes from the Creator. So we're going to talk about the Torah, the path of Torah, which is a path of light, and we're going to talk about the path of pain in the next lesson. I hope you join us, and I hope you're taking notes, because it seems to be like you're getting little information, but remember, I'm giving you little scoops of food. So whenever you get deeper and deeper and deeper, you have a little understanding of what's going to happen next, and you don't feel confused. And it's very important for you to watch these lessons in sequence, not skipping any lesson, because there's a transition from one lesson to the other one. They follow each other for a reason, because by the end of the beginner's lessons, you're going to be able to understand any Kabbalistic text that you read. You will understand when he says heaven and the earth. What does that mean? When he says, honor your father and your mother. What does that mean? When he talks about the menorah in the book of Exodus, even though we're going to study, Bereshit, the book of Genesis, but Bereshit has a lot to do with the book of Exodus. You're going to understand what the menorah is all about. Why do we need an ark of the covenant? What type of correction these utensils and the people of Israel were doing at that time of the Exodus. What is the meaning of Adam and Eve, Cain and Abel, Seth? Why God destroyed this generation, what we call the generation of the flood? Why God confused the languages of the people in Babylon and all that? All that Kabbalah explains it, but you have to have these little bits of knowledge. It's just like it's just like this ladder, right? I'm giving you what is down here, so when we cross here, you have an idea what this is all about. So when you study this, which is like a fractal in spirituality, spiritual fractals, I call Kabbalah, I usually see Kabbalah as spiritual fractals. Whatever is down here is an image of what is above here. Whatever is an image of whatever is above here, and here and here. And that's something you gotta understand. You probably asked the same question I asked in the beginning. How do we know what is up there when we're down here? The answer is by his actions we know him. By the patterns that we see here, we know what's going on up there. Okay? So we're gonna talk about our work and how correction happens in our life, and how we choose that correction to happen, if it's going to happen by the path of Torah, which is the path of light, or if it's going to happen by the path of pain, which is the path that most of us, I would say 99.99% of humanity is choosing. And how this little point in the heart of humanity and the heart of each human being called Israel can help with this correction. So I'll see you in the next lesson, and I hope you got notes and that you study that. Continue with the homework I gave in the previous lesson, in which every action that you take, look within yourself, and you'll see that it has something to do with your own egoism. That even though you're taking an action, doing something good, in your mind you're thinking about what is there for me. And it's usually a good feeling, an emotional feeling that I'm a good person. And you're gonna see how we lie to ourselves about that, and how hard spiritual work is all about. It's not about just helping the people that are in need. It's also about helping ourselves by changing our intention. Okay? So I'll leave you there. Continue working on that homework, and I'll see you in the next lesson. Thank you for being here with me.